The formation of empires and the establishment of new orders usually happens after defeats and the destruction of all previous systems. The rise of empires often comes through controlling the conquered and the defeated, something similar to the amazing power of the Sassanid Empire after Emperor Valerian of Rome bowed before Shapur, as shown on the rock relief at Naqshi Rustam in Shiraz, Iran. If a group of people pool money to buy a cake, usually the one who contributed more expects a bigger share. After World War II, the United States, having spent more money and even used its atomic bomb, demanded a larger share of veto power and other privileges from the Allies. What exactly was that share? World War II had nearly destroyed Europe, and major economies like Japan and Germany were bankrupt. The only country whose land remained largely untouched and undamaged was the United States. By 1944, America had accumulated 2/3 of the world's gold reserves, was the largest creditor in the world, and controlled more than 50% of global production. It had effectively become the banker of the world. In July 1944, a year before the end of the war, 44 countries, heavily indebted to the US, realized that if each held its own currency without a standard reference, serious problems would arise. They needed a benchmark currency for settling accounts with America. So, at a hotel in the foothills of New Hampshire, the Bretton Woods Conference was held. It was decided that currencies would be pegged to the dollar, and $35 would equal 1 ounce of gold. The dollar became the sun, and other currencies revolved around it like planets in the solar system. Financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank were established. England, though a war victor, was practically bankrupt and could no longer maintain financial dominance over Europe with the pound. Gradually, even it bowed down. Dollar loans, like oxygen, were injected across Europe to rebuild war-torn nations, and countries became increasingly dependent on the dollar. Now, it was time for the coronation. A few years later, as the 1960s began, America's own domestic problems started to weigh on the dollar. The devastating, drawn-out Vietnam War and President Lyndon Johnson's social welfare program, known as the Great Society, pushed the United States to print dollars without gold backing. This broke the $35 per ounce balance. European countries realized America was changing the rules. That's why Charles de Gaulle, the president of France, sent a ship loaded with dollars to the US, saying, "We don't want paper anymore, we want gold." Germany and Japan soon wanted gold instead of dollars as well. Then, on August 15, 1971, came the Nixon shock. In a televised address, President Richard Nixon announced that the dollar would no longer be tied to gold, but instead to the economic power of the United States itself. He declared America would no longer exchange dollars for gold. Gradually, the dollar lost value against gold. People and countries began to lose trust in it. The US leadership had to find a solution. That solution became the petrodollar. In the 1970s, any country that wanted its industries to keep running needed oil. In 1974, the US struck a landmark deal with Saudi Arabia. Oil would only be sold in exchange for dollars. In return, the United States guaranteed the security of the Saudi royal family and the kingdom itself. This system later spread to OPEC and other oil-exporting nations. Anyone who wanted oil and energy had to first get US dollars. Countries like Saudi Arabia, which reinvested their enormous oil profits back into the American economy, created a cycle that sent dollars flowing back to the US. This recycling process, where oil money powered America's wars and global reach, became known as the petrodollar system. Now the king sought to expand his realm. One of the most influential moves by the US Treasury to strengthen the dollar's political and economic power was the sale of Treasury bonds, one of the safest and most powerful financial markets in the world. As nations increasingly needed dollars for their national reserves, the United States was able to reduce its debt burden by selling these bonds. Wall Street banks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Citigroup also played a decisive role, not only inside America, but across the globe. By now, the US had become the economic king of the world. It used the dollar as a weapon. Through the SWIFT financial network, though officially Belgian, yet heavily influenced by Washington, the US could push any country that disobeyed its rules out of the global financial system. With 60% of the world's reserves held in dollars and 80% of world trade conducted in dollars, one of America's most powerful tools became sanctions. Countries like Iran, Russia, and North Korea saw their national currencies collapse under the weight of these sanctions, serving as a warning to others who might dream of challenging US power. There have been attempts to end dollar hegemony, the creation of the euro, China's push to internationalize the yuan, and BRICS currency ideas, but none have substantially shaken the dollar's position. In the long run, digital currencies could pose a real challenge. China has already launched a digital version of the yuan. Perhaps, in the not-too-distant future, to maintain its global dominance, the United States may rely not only on the dollar, but also on other measures, such as selling weapons to countries at war and instigating regional conflicts. The question remains, what could finally take the crown from the head of the king of the world economy? If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe.